This is Meet the Media, and thank you so much for staying with us. We are, of course, talking about the phenomenon of the celebrity journalist. Some journalists have evolved into brands, some might say, with some of the most enterprising among them even establishing their own lucrative internet presences. Can fame enhance what journalists do? And what are some of the ways it can actually hamstring their work as well? Remember to take part in this conversation online. You can do so by using the hashtag Meet the Media. To help me unpack this very difficult and interesting topic, I hope, I still have Mandy Wiener with me, and I'm also now joined by the Director at Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird. William, thanks for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
I asked Mandy a very unfair question. The idea of whether you're famous or whether you're a celebrity is perhaps hard, but let's just start with the basics. Are there many journalists, whether they want to or not, who are celebrities?
I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't want to call a journalist a celebrity per se because they do something that's useful and contributes to society, which, unlike Brangelina, the news of their divorce, right? Like, it's very nice they make movies, and I'm not saying that has no value, but journalists bring real value to your society and to your democracy. They help you unpack it, they help you understand it, if they're any good, and they offer you some kind of real insight and understanding to what's going on. So,
but that's not incompatible with being celebrated, right? Which is where the idea comes from. I always think, Mandy, that maybe one playful way of asking whether someone is a celebrity is to ask, could they ever be fodder for a Sunday Sun or a Sunday World journalist? And the truth of the matter is, can Ferrell effigy? Yeah. Can Mandy Wiener? Yeah. Absolutely. Can Eusebius McKasier? Sadly, even if you would like not to be watched for what he does at a club, absolutely you can. So isn't it reality that precisely because social media allows us to see every aspect of the lives of media practitioners, that journalists, many of us, are also celebrities?
Well, look, I agree with you on some level, but I look at it as, would my life necessarily make the pages of You magazine, the gossip pages, and who I date and what my child looks like doesn't necessarily make the pages of You magazine, because I don't think people are really interested in it. So I think that while we might have brands, we may not be celebrities in the same way that continuity presenters or musicians are in this country. I wouldn't see myself as a celebrity in that interpretation of it, but I certainly think that you have brand journalists in this country.
Although we could probably play example table tennis, right? I mean, if you take Mandy Wiener, if he had to be seen doing something that he regrets in a bush outside a shopping centre, chances are You magazine would pick up on it.
Yeah, well, that happens to him frequently.
Well, I think if anybody does anything like that, they'll probably end up.
But it raises an interesting nub of the question, which is the heart of today's conversation, William, which is, even if we don't use the language and framing of celebrity, and we talk about branding, and I agree with Mandy on that, are there any inherent dangers in journalists also having brands and being brands on social media and elsewhere?
I mean, there must be, right? In the same way as media houses stand for certain things, there will be times when a journalist is going to be nailed for having taken a position on something and then being shown up for that position. So I think that the risk for journalists who are brands is if they get something wrong, they're bound to be hit a lot harder than a person who's able to hide behind a media house because they can blame process and all sorts of other things. So I think that the risk for the journalists themselves is quite high, and that fall can be quite dramatic and significant. You only need to look at the celebrities who've tweeted and done stupid things on social media to see that you can be a very popular person, but you earn, you're going to go wrong. So I think that with journalists, it's even that much more tricky because they're in the business of unpacking things, and the journalists that are then doing investigative pieces where they're exposing themselves to risk almost by virtue of the fact that they're exposing things that people don't want to know or don't want revealed, means that there's a risk there. Of course,
but it also comes with opportunities. I don't know whether we've got a nice graphic shot here. I mean, Mandy will talk about it for 10 seconds in the third person. It's very popular on Twitter, for example. Oh, there she is, lo and behold. And has a huge Twitter following, several 100,000. And if you look at her Twitter account, I mean, that's an enormous number of people with digital lives who are interested, voyeuristically or otherwise, in who Mandy is. So, Mandy, how do you think about your Twitter engagement and your Twitter profile, for example? Which part of Mandy Wiener do you expose to 260,000 people?
So I'm incredibly strict about this. I only tweet about news or something that is of public interest. Anything personal goes onto Facebook. So I will never tweet anything that is private or anything that discloses anything about my own personal life. Because I'm of the view that people follow me on Twitter because they want to hear about the news, because that's what my brand is associated with, is they want to hear breaking news, they want to hear news analysis, and that's what I try and tweet about. I'm also very, very careful about what I say on Twitter. And my approach to Twitter has changed considerably since I first opened an account. In the beginning, I would just, I would live tweet breaking news at will. Now I think very carefully about what I put out, and I often type tweets and then delete them. And I imagine, would I want to stand up in a stadium of 200,000 people and say these words to them? Would that be okay? Because it's going to get retweeted. I have to stand by what I say on Twitter. And as you say, the fall, if you get something wrong, if I get a fact wrong, the comeback is massive for me.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting evolution of your position. I think many of us have to learn and rethink what we do on Twitter. Would you, for example, now go on top billing?
I have been on top billing.
We do our homework on the show, man. That's exactly the point, right? In fact, there we are. Mandy Wiener. I love it. I love that shot.
I should have known that was coming. That is an exact example of where, people were interested. The way that actually evolved is it came through an architect. They were actually interested in the architect's work, not in me as an individual. It just evolved into they worked out that it was my house and they were quite interested in me, as one would be. But that's an example of where I suppose people do become interested in the person behind
Is that necessarily
the
a problem, William? Is she or did she journalistically blur the line by bringing us into her home? I mean, a top billing appearance. Secretly, we all want to be in top billing. But
that's it. You see, come on, tell me that you wouldn't do it if they asked you.
Is that problematic at all, or not?
Well, I don't think previously it probably would have been, crossing that line because you had this traditional idea of objectivity. And now I think if you look at the new ethics that are being talked about and ethical principles, they don't talk about be independent, they talk about be transparent. So if you're able to get a sense of who Mandy is, that you know that she's this kind of person, that she's clear about how she operates, that she's clear about her assumptions, etc., then I don't think so. Where it becomes a problem is you get people that masquerade as others, where it's not a clear fake account or something, and then they deliberately mislead people. I think that obviously does huge damage.
But of course, perception is everything, right?
Yep.
So if you take, for example, Reedy Clubby was involved in a bread commercial. I was trying to find it the other day to tease her. I'm not sure if the commercial is still running. The problem is that the platforms we appear on, the places we go to as well, it doesn't just have to be TV shows. They also tend to then give people, for better or worse, certain associations with us. When I think top billing, I think, for example, high class, lots of money. I don't think that about Kumbele Kaya, for example. So the next time I hear Mandy Wiener reporting on Fields, fees must fall, isn't there a danger that I will automatically assume that I'm getting a middle class, anti-poor view because I've now associated her mimetically with, say, top billing?
Yeah, completely. But I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with that because it might give you extra insight into Mandy's perspective, which isn't to say that she necessarily holds that. It might be something completely different. But I don't think there's a problem.
Not an inherent problem, yeah.
No.
And I'm going to give you a chance. I just need to break there for a second because I know you and I also spoke about this just off air, whether or not that's a problem or not. And I wonder whether you regard it as a problem. My views on this are also well documented. I do think there's a difference between subjective journalism and journalism that is poor journalism. Does that distinction make sense? Do tell us by using the hashtag #MeetTheMedia or tweeting us at ENCA or at Eusebius. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We're having a riveting conversation here about celebrity journalists, or whether journalists who become celebrities, or whether even if they have brands, perhaps not as celebrities, what the opportunities are, what the pitfalls are, whether there's a danger that their work may be compromised or not. And I'm joined still, of course, by Mandy Wiener, who's with me, and also William Bird. Sorry, Mandy, you wanted to jump in there. We were talking about perceptions people might have depending on your brand and how they've come to know you personally and who you are. And I must say, before you respond, that we often get away with it when we wear our hats as, say, talk show hosts, because we're told that you get paid to be a personality. So there's no reason for me why that shouldn't extend to you guys who are doing reporting and investigative work. But I did stop you there. What did you want to say?
Look, I think often there's a distinction between a journalist and being a talk show host, and the one gets to have an opinion and the other doesn't. I used the example of being on top billing and then having to report on fees must fall. And I think that the first thing is that people often draw assumptions about what my views may then be on a certain topic, that because I come from a white privileged background, I could be critical of the students. And that may not necessarily be true, simply because it's an assumption based on what you've seen of my life or my lifestyle. The other is that I do think that as a good journalist and a good reporter, you're able to separate yourself from your background and present the facts to the audience and allow the audience to draw their own opinions on the facts. And as a journalist, when you're doing breaking news and hard news, that is your responsibility, is to provide the facts to the audience and allow them to then draw their own assumptions and create their own opinions. But there's always this great myth about this concept of being an objective journalist. And I always endeavor to be an objective journalist, but the truth is there is no true such thing. As an objective journalist. You can be balanced, you can be fair, you can be accurate, you can be a good journalist, but to be objective, you're always going to come from some kind of context and always see a situation through a certain lens.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can't change your social markers. And I want to get your view here, William. I mean, I would go even further than Mandy and say that distinction between reporting the facts and giving an opinion, that has been broken down as a result of new media, and perhaps that is okay. If I pick up something written on Daily Maverick by, say, Stephen Grootes, I know that Stephen Grootes has got ideological commitments, but it's not going to stop me from reading his work, and I'm going to judge it on the basis of balance, accuracy, is it well written? So how do we respond to the public who says, oh, come on, guys, you're really just trying to smooth over something that's actually fundamentally serious, that all I want is reportage, the facts?
So where it becomes different is this, right? It's journalists that are celebrities, but they still work for traditional media houses. And what you'll find in some instances is that they'll tweet certain things where their position is very, very clear, and then they'll write a story about that same thing, and then you expect it to think, well, and that introduces a problem for readers, because their sense is they're saying the president is a banana bread. And then they write a story that says about the president, and then they think, well, of course he's going to say that, because he's just said that president is a banana, and that's where it becomes a problem. So I think that...
But wouldn't it be less of a problem if we dealt with that potential schizophrenia by simply being honest about your subjectivity, even in your reporting? You know what I mean? If you're doing live reporting from the Wits Great Hall and you are there as Tulasizwe Semalani, it's very hard to pretend that the entire facts of your biography won't, in part, inform how it is that you report what it is that you see around you. Isn't that true, Mandy?
Well, look, absolutely. And I mean, I'll disclose something that's a conscious decision that I've made, is I will not report on anything that is related to the Jewish community in this country, or anything to do with Middle East affairs, because I don't believe that I can have an objective view on it. And I think it would be unfair to my followers on Twitter, or to my listeners, or to an audience, if I have to report on it because I have a personal, emotional, vested interest. I think that you have to be quite careful about the line you tread, because at the same time, you need to be responsible. And you've got to remember that you are the conduit. You are the filter through which many people in this country see and interpret very, very crucial news issues.
We'll leave it there. Mandy and William, thank you so much for joining me on the show. And of course, you can continue taking part in this conversation digitally by using the hashtag #MeetTheMedia. From me and the rest of my team, have yourself a wonderful week ahead. too.